Hello Cloud Gurus, and welcome to this very special reInvent edition of AWS This Week. Of course, this week we saw the beginning of 3 weeks of reInvent, so there were some very cool announcements already from Andy Jassy's keynote. And I've also got some very special guests today who will be discussing all the latest storage, database and compute announcements from this week, and we announce our Guru of the Week. You're watching AWS This Week with me, Faye Ellis. This week, we saw the beginning of the very first virtual reInvent. And once again, Andy Jassy's keynote did not disappoint, and there was something for everyone. In fact, I counted at least 32 announcements during his keynote alone, so here are my favorites. There were some great announcements in terms of compute, including the new Graviton2 based C6GN instance types, and these are network optimized instance types capable of 100 gigabits per second network bandwidth and a 40% price performance uplift compared to the current generation of x86 network optimized instances. And these are going to be great for high performance computing, network appliances, and data analytics. We also heard about Habana Gaudi-based EC2 instances, which will be available in 2021. And these are instances powered by Gaudi AI training processors instead of GPUs. And they deliver up to a 40% better price performance than current GPU-based EC2 instances, and they're specifically designed for training deep learning models like natural language processing, object detection, and recommendation engines. AWS Trainium was also announced, and Trainium is another custom machine learning processor designed to provide the best price performance for training machine learning models in the cloud. And it's optimized for training deep learning workloads like image classification, voice recognition, and recommendation engines. And Trainium is going to be great for driving down the cost of training deep learning models. On to containers, and in 2021, customers will be able to run Elastic Kubernetes Service and Elastic Container Service in their own data center using 2 new services, EKS Anywhere and ECS Anywhere. And this is going to be great for customers who want the flexibility to deploy containers in their own data center as well as in AWS, and use the same management tools and APIs for both environments. Moving on to serverless, and the most exciting announcement was of course per millisecond billing for Lambda, which is going to save many customers an awful lot on their AWS bills. And you can now also deploy Docker containers as Lambda functions using container images of up to 10 gigabytes in size. And to deploy a container image, you simply select one from your Elastic Container Service registry, and Lambda will use the image to create a function running your code. And this is going to be great for developers who've already invested a lot of time in building workflows for containerized applications and would now like to run their code in Lambda. So now let's talk about storage. And the most outstanding announcement for 2021 is that AWS is launching the very first SAN built for the cloud. And it's based on a new EBS volume called IO2 Block Express, designed for high performance at scale. So this is going to be great for storing data that would traditionally require a SAN. So things like SAP HANA, Cassandra, and mission critical transaction processing applications. And this is going to be a great win for customers who need SAN performance without the headache of operating their own SAN. And you can sign up for the preview right now. On to databases, and the standout announcement here is Babelfish for Aurora PostgreSQL. And what does that even mean? Well, this is all about enabling you to run queries written for Microsoft SQL Server on Aurora PostgreSQL databases. And this is amazing because it means that applications currently running on SQL Server can now run directly on Aurora PostgreSQL with little to no code changes. And this is going to be great for customers wanting to break free from expensive SQL Server licenses. And for customers looking to quickly gain insights about their data, there is Amazon QuickSight Q, which is a great new service which allows you to run natural language queries on your business data. For example, you can ask Q to find your best-selling products over the past quarter for a specific region, just by typing the question in a search bar, and Q will return the results in the form of numbers and graphs, and this is in preview right now. Let's move on to machine learning, and there were 3 cool new launches. Firstly, SageMaker Data Wrangler, which is going to help speed up and automate data preparation using pre-built data transformations. There's also SageMaker Feature Store to make it easy to store, save, and reuse the same features or data attributes for model training and inference. And SageMaker Pipelines, which brings automation and CI/CD to SageMaker workflows. And speaking of DevOps, we also have DevOps Guru, and it's no relation to A Cloud Guru, but it's a machine learning powered service designed to help you identify operational issues long before they can have any impact on your customers. And it uses machine learning to identify anomalies in your environment, like increased latency, error rates, and resource limits, and it will notify you of any issues that could cause a potential service outage. And to do that, it automatically ingests data from CloudWatch, AWS Config, CloudTrail, and X-Ray, and the machine learning model uses this data to predict issues before they happen and proactively alert you. And finally, there were a couple of cool announcements in the IoT space. Firstly, Amazon Lookout for Equipment, which is an awesome new anomaly detection service for industrial machinery, which analyzes sensor data stored in S3, and it uses machine learning to identify abnormalities and proactively alert you to any issues that could affect the normal running of your machinery. And secondly, there's Amazon Monitron. And where do they get these names? So Monitron is an end-to-end solution for industrial machinery monitoring. And this is a complete solution consisting of sensors to capture vibration and temperature data from your equipment, a secure mechanism for getting the data into AWS, and machine learning to detect abnormalities, and also a mobile application to alert you. So now let's head over to ACG training architects Craig Arcuri, Errol Hooper, and John Hanna for a discussion of all the latest reInvent updates on storage, databases, and compute.
Alrighty, thank you, Faye, for that introduction. I'm Errol. I'm a TA here at ACG, A Cloud Guru.
I'm Craig Arcuri, also a training architect at A Cloud Guru.
I am John Hanna, also a training architect at A Cloud Guru. How's reInvent been for you guys this year?
It's different, John. I'll tell you, I live in the Northeast, and we've actually gotten a snowstorm in the last couple of days. I've been missing Las Vegas, and that just made me exponentially miss Las Vegas. So what I'm going to do is that $100 I always lose at the slot machines, I'll just give to a reputable charity that maybe doesn't have marble floors.
There you go.
I feel you on that one. Yeah,
certainly been a lot less walking this year, which my feet thank me for.
But I definitely missed the interaction with other like engineers and hearing about what everybody's doing at their company with a lot of the tools that's coming out. So I definitely missed the social aspect to it for sure.
That is definitely missing, and that's one of those things that we get a lot of at our booth every year, is getting to meet the people that are learning with us and getting to spend some time with them in person. Hopefully next year we'll be back in person and can get that back.
Speaking about our learnings, let's hop right on in. So Craig, you want to start us off with what's been going on in storage?
Absolutely. It seems like a really big year for storage. There are a bunch of announcements. I'd encourage you to check that out. I'm going to touch on a few here. We don't have time to go into everything. It's pretty hefty. So one of the big announcements is a GP3. It's a new general purpose SSD volume. First of all, it's offering 20% savings per gigabyte. And then additionally, it is 4 times faster than the previous iteration, the GP2. So that's a pretty big deal. And it was treated as such in the keynote speech.
GP2 has been around for quite a while, and
Yeah.
I think it was definitely due for an update. And I think that will expand the use cases for the GP volumes into maybe some more production workloads where
Yep.
It's going to be a little safer to use those.
Absolutely. That's a big one. Another one that kind of caught my eye was IO2 tiered pricing for IOPS volumes. And think about tiered pricing, we're probably thinking about how that's used in S3 with cost savings for our storage. It's a similar concept here. Now, where we're going to get our savings is by designating the IOPS that we need below 32,000 or 32 to 64 or 64 and above, and that's going to be our tiers. So that's a pretty big deal. So my favorite announcement for storage, and it's kind of like, what's my favorite pizza? Well, what day of the week is it? And I'm kind of craving some bacon today. So this one's kind of along those lines. Multi-destination support for S3 replication. And what that's going to do is when we write our objects to S3, we can replicate at the same time to multiple locations, whether those locations are in the same region or a different region. Think about that. Anytime we're replicating to a different region, we're strengthening our disaster recovery stance, or it could be for a compliance reason that we just have to do that. And folks might be thinking, well, wait a second. I could build an automation to do that. I could use S3 events. I could write a Lambda function, and I can replicate anywhere I want to. And that is the case. This is certainly a convenience thing, a time-saving thing. Right out of the box, we can do that now.
Nice. That's really cool. I know a lot of people who really rely on S3 is gonna enjoy that redundancy, just being there natively in S3, and to your point, not having to like redo all that work to make sure their objects are stored in multiple locations. So that is pretty major. Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. John, you want to go ahead and talk about what's going on in the database world this week at reInvent?
So we had 3 big announcements from the leadership session for databases this week. We got Aurora Postgres Babelfish, which is a kind of a shim that lets you use T-SQL, which is the SQL Server variety of SQL, with Aurora Postgres. This doesn't seem like a huge deal at first, but it really takes a lot of the work out of migrating from a SQL Server backend to an Aurora Postgres backend, because it is a full compatibility layer for T-SQL. And then the next thing we learned about was the Elastic views for Glue. And what this lets us do, one of the big challenges with DynamoDB is to pull data out of DynamoDB to use in other services. So the example that they use, which is a fairly common one, is how do we make our DynamoDB data searchable? And we can use these Glue Elastic views to essentially do an on-the-fly ETL into other services like Elasticsearch and S3 and Redshift to have the data available there. We're looking at a AWS database landscape that is, the services themselves are becoming more mature. And so what we're seeing this year in particular is this connection layer being built above them that facilitate a lot of things that before you would have to do manually with Lambda and EMR and other services like that that aren't necessarily easy to use. So they're creating these services that simplify these processes that are common pain points in data architectures. The other thing we learned about, which is probably the most exciting for me, because when Aurora Serverless launched, it was really built as an infrequent access relational database, which is not what you would get from the name Aurora Serverless. So they let us see Aurora Serverless version 2, which has the feature sets you would expect from Aurora Serverless from the name. So it's able to scale dynamically with your workload on the fly, right there with your workload. I think this is going to be really big. It's going into preview, and so it may be a while before we actually see a full release, but it is definitely going to be a big change because it gives you a relational engine in that place that maybe DynamoDB fits a little better with the dynamic scaling. So that was really exciting for me to see. We're seeing a lot of ease of use features and services being launched for databases, and those are great. I always love seeing that kind of ease of use stuff because it means I can spend less time writing Lambda functions and more time worrying about how I'm going to do my data architecture stuff.
That seems to be a theme here this year, is that ease of use, the serverless, especially, with you talking about Aurora Serverless, everything is really around transitioning to a more serverless architecture. So I really have enjoyed those announcements for sure. So this week, I was focusing on the compute sessions. AWS made some really big announcements this week in the compute session, one of which Faye mentioned earlier, which is the multi-cloud functionality that they're bringing, which includes ECS, which is the Elastic Container Service, as well as EKS, which is Elastic Kubernetes Service within AWS. This functionality is very similar to when you think of like Red Hat's OpenShift product. And it's really going to be key to a lot of those consumers, as well as students here on our ACG platform who work in industries like government and healthcare, who would like to use cloud tooling, but are just kind of restricted to their data center by their the scope of their work. Another one that was mentioned was the EC2 now supporting Mac OS. This is really great for those developers who are developing applications who previously had to use virtual machines to develop those Mac OS native applications on the existing images that are available within EC2 now. So this is really going to be powerful to know that those developers using Mac OS can now do that on a EC2 instance available directly within AWS. There were also some announcements that were made as it relates to Lambda, just kind of going back to what we were talking about, John, with serverless and these ease of use features. Lambda, which is AWS's serverless compute, it was announced this week that first there will be some billing changes where Lambda was initially billed by rounding up to the nearest 100th of a millisecond. Now Lambda will be billed by the millisecond. So what you'll see is those Lambdas that are shorter running, you're going to see a lot of cost increases, just another incentive to kind of take those applications to a serverless compute like Lambda. Another interesting thing about that as well was the Lambda memory and CPU increases. So that's going to be big. And of course, taking some of those same applications that we run in our EC2 instances and possibly running them in a more serverless, cost-effective way. And the last announcement that was related to Lambda that I thought was really interesting was the container image support for Lambda. That was really cool because one of the biggest complaints about Lambda is compiling, especially when we use compile heavy languages like Java, that eats away at our memory and CPU just spinning up the Lambda. And so now the actual container image that Lambda runs on, AWS is giving us the opportunity to be able to install applications so that they're already available. That's another perk and adjustment that's going to be able to shorten our runtime for our Lambdas. And the last thing that I'll mention in compute was DevOps Guru, which is very similar to Amazon Code Guru, which kind of talked about how we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to see errors in our code. However, DevOps Guru is going to look at different services within our AWS architecture and use machine learning to see if there's any use and see if we have any bugs in our system. So I thought that those were the major announcements for compute that I thought were really interesting.
Yeah, the Lambda container is really exciting because it takes maybe tasks that you're running in ECS that aren't very long that make more sense in the Lambda framework, and now you can just lift those containers and run them out of Lambda as opposed to ECS, and you get that full Lambda feature set there as opposed to the more bare bones ECS task setup. I caught that one, and that was exciting for me.
Yeah, same here.
I'm excited personally and professionally for that Mac EC2 instance. I want to check that out. I'm looking forward to incorporating that into some courses. That's going to be really cool. And I think it'll get some heavy use right off the bat.
Yeah, I totally agree. With developers developing Mac OS products, I mean, you're talking about tons and tons of devices, and we're moving into more Internet of Things, more of these type architectures. That's going to be a game changer for sure. So I'm totally with you there, Craig. Well, I think that wraps it up here for us. Thank you guys so much, and we'll bounce it back over to Faye.
Thank you to Craig, Errol and John for that update. And don't forget to visit our 12 Days of reInvent virtual booth for daily updates and the chance to win some awesome swag. And if you're currently studying for the Solutions Architect Associate exam, join Ryan, Matthias and Scott for a live study hour where they'll be walking through exam questions on Monday, December 7th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So now on to Guru of the Week. And the answer to last week's question was A. And the person with the best answer is Yuval Weisberger, who is a senior software engineer in Israel. So congratulations to Yuval. There's a t-shirt and sticker pack on their way to you. And we have a new question now live on our forum. So please visit the link in the description to enter for another chance to win some exclusive swag. And that is all from us. Keep being awesome, Cloud Gurus. Enjoy the rest of reInvent, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.